Bloated Goat. I'm Aaron.
I'm Christopher.
Hey there, you life-saving man.
I have saved your life on numerous occasions. That is correct. But I would never ask for anything in return.
No. So today, obviously, we're doing Andy Saves Gomer. This is a classic episode. It's one of my favorites. It's really high up there. It's also, I think, arguably, this is the first real episode where Don Knotts is not in it and Jim Nabors really carries all the comedy.
Yeah, I agree.
I really enjoy it. What about you? How'd you like it?
It was a lot of fun. I thought it was a great episode.
Yeah. And have you ever saved anybody's life?
Every day.
Every day?
I'm a consultant. Of course I do.
I mean,
I deal in life and death.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's always you deal in a profession where it's really, you get to just come in and you say what people should be doing and what they're not doing. And when you're right, they're kind of like, oh my God, I'm so glad we hired this consultant.
Saved their life.
Saved their life.
What about you? Have you?
Not directly. I mean, maybe there'll be some moment where you're like, you did this and this had all this impact.
Some taxes and then the government invested in a program and then that maybe.
Well, maybe, I don't know. I mean, you do. I've never swooped in and put out a fire, I guess you could say.
Got it. Okay.
So you want to dive in?
Let's dive in. Feet first today.
Feet first. All right. This episode first aired on March 16th, 1964. And the other great thing about this episode is Floyd's back.
Floyd's back. It took me for a loop.
Yeah.
I was wondering if I was in the wrong season. Then it just made me happy.
Me too. So obviously Howard McNear had the stroke in season 3. And this is the first episode where he was back. He's seated. And he'll be seated a lot throughout the remainder of the series, but his comedic timing and his acting has not lost a step.
No, I was also worried about him. He just had his scissors in his pocket, which I feel like you trip and fall that goes straight into the heart.
No, there's that, but he's not doing a lot of walking, so he's okay there.
Okay.
So we open with a letter from Barney, and as I mentioned last week, in a rare moment of continuity, he's actually taken the vacation that Andy sent him on, and he's vacationing with cousin Virgil. You remember that disaster of the cousin of Barney's in an earlier episode? Yeah.
Of course I do.
Yeah, that's who he's with.
A lot of continuity there.
Yeah. And Andy reads the letter to Barney and Opie, and it sounds like a wild vacation.
It does. It really does. Peekaboo.
So you know what a peekaboo blouse is?
I don't.
Apparently it was a blouse that just showed a little bit of skin.
Okay.
Yeah, just had an opening. And it's the wild vacation, and he's played skee ball, he went into a photo booth, he's really wild time, especially the part where he goes to the waffle shop where the waitresses wear peekaboo blouses. And then he says, and let me tell you, and then Andy can't share what he wrote with Opie, who wonders what Barney's talking about. And then after Opie leaves, Floyd asks him to read that part again, which is really funny.
Yeah. It's fun. It's fun.
Yeah. And then later, Andy goes to the filling station and finds Gomer asleep as rags are burning in a 55-gallon drum. Andy puts the fire out, but tells
with sand, which Gomer was looking for water.
Yeah.
I don't think water would have been a very good idea there.
Probably not.
If you got a grease fire?
That's a good point. So Andy puts the fire out, but tells Gomer to tell Wally to be more careful about where he throws his cigar butts. And then Gomer decides that Andy saved his life, and Andy insists that he didn't. And he then leaves the letter from Barney with Gomer, just saying, I thought you might find it entertaining. And then it's clear Gomer wants to pay him back in some sort of way. And as Andy leaves, Gomer says, thanks for saving my life, which is just really funny. And the next morning, the Taylors are sitting down for breakfast, and Gomer comes in, and there are just moments where Aunt B's or Frances Bavier's acting just make me laugh. And the sound she makes when Gomer puts that fish, that thing of fish in front of her, just always makes me laugh every time.
Yeah. I was distracted by the last thing I want in the morning is fish.
Oh, yeah. Me too. And then he explains he's caught the fish for Andy because he saved his life. And it starts off with something that goes a little bit like this. Roaring Blaze went through the filling station yesterday, and I was trapped inside, a goner. And then Andy battled his way through the flames and saved my life. It's just great stuff.
It's very visual. Very visual. We get some good storytelling. We get some good storytelling out of Andy a little bit later in the episode too.
Yeah. And then Andy says to call it even with the fish, but Gomer says he's already washed his car too, and he's going to do more. And he offers to take Opie to school, saying he'll carry the firstborn child of the man who saved his life to school. And it just makes me laugh.
I like that quite a bit too.
Yeah. And at the jail, Andy is working, and Gomer comes in with his rain.
Let's just play that out a little bit further, right? You were just in Egypt. I guess that's not wrong place, but I'm picturing like Opie being carried in like Xerxes.
I mean, I would just wonder if he would just carry him like cradle him like this in his arms. He'd carry him high.
I think he'd carry him high, and then he'd have all of the like Xerxes from 300, right? Like he'd have all of the face tattoos. It would be like the beginning of Ron Howard being a Mad Max character.
Spartans, prepare for battle. Because tonight, I don't know. Maybe something like that.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So at the jail, Andy is working, and Barney comes in with Gomer comes in with his rain gear because it looks cloudy and he doesn't want to catch pneumonia. Then later, Andy hears a rapping on the windows, and he opens the blinds to see Gomer cleaning them. Another look is just the silent comedy of Gomer looking and seeing Andy and just giving the goofiest smile and wave. And then when Andy goes outside, when people walk up, Gomer tells them how he saved his life. And then it's also great silent comedy because Andy goes back inside and sees Gomer, and Gomer's just telling this story. It's like pointing, saying, "That's the man who saved my life." And then Andy closes the blinds. And back at home, Andy pulls up to see that Gomer has cut him enough firewood for 7 winters. I am kind of like, what is he going to? This is almost ridiculous. I'm like, where did he get all this wood to cut?
Yeah, no kidding. Probably went out to like Mark's Lumber near Clancy and filled up the back of his truck.
Possibly, yeah. And then apparently he's reorganized the attic too, and he's messed everything up. And he starts to go to the boiled dinner at the fire hall. Andy does, and then Gomer meets him at the door, asking if he wants to go with him. And that's when Andy's like, "No,
What's
I think
I'm boiled dinner."
I assuming it's just like a fish boil.
Okay.
No. And then Gomer says he will help him every day of his life, and then leaves and says, "Goodbye, lifesaver man," as we go to commercial.
It's cute.
And after the break, they are at the breakfast table, and Gomer has not shown up, and they think he may have just forgotten and moved on. And Andy reminds Opie that it is Saturday and he needs to cut the grass. And they open the door and hear Gomer mowing. Gomer's not going anywhere. And at the jail, Opie comes in and tells him that Gomer has been shadowing him while he skates, and it's embarrassing. And which I can imagine it is. I mean, I can imagine just any adult standing around while you're trying to skate is something.
Those skates looked intense.
Those skates looked intense.
I think the wheels were also metal. It was all shiny. There's no way those have any traction.
No, and the funny thing is he talks about falling down a lot. Obviously, I hear that and I'm like, oh, falling down on concrete on skates. I feel like that's just broken bone central. That's just such the difference on being a little kid.
Yeah.
And Gomer comes in and Opie runs and hides, and Gomer says he can't find Opie, and Andy comes up with a lie that Opie is waiting around while Aunt Bee bakes, which is basically the liar's equivalent of robbing Peter to pay Paul, because
he completely sacrificed.
Yeah. Yeah, it just chucks Aunt Bee under the bus. And so Gomer takes off to go help Aunt Bee. And in the kitchen, he's there, and it's a disaster. He's breaking things, flowers going all over the place. It's a mess. And then later, the Taylors eat hiding in a jail cell. Aunt Bee wasn't ever able to bake the pie. And as they leave, Andy jokes and says they may not even... Actually, she wasn't making pie. She was making angel food cake. Sorry.
Oh, I love that too, though. In the morning, she's like, do you want applesauce cake or do you want angel? He's like, I like applesauce cake. She's like, angel food it is. It's like, you sassy girl. I like you today.
Yeah. It's like, whatever you want, Andy. And this, no, not
wrong
really.
answer.
Exactly. And as they leave, Andy jokes and says they may not be even until Gomer saves Andy's life. And he gets an idea. And he devises a plan where Gomer saves him from a gas leak.
This is a high-risk plan.
Yeah, I mean, that's really a high-risk plan. I really feel like anytime you're messing around with leaking gas, and it's basically to hope Gomer Pyle does what you want him to do, you're or Barney, for instance. I mean, you're running into a problem.
Yeah, it's tough pudding.
Yeah. So, but he devises a plan where Gomer saves him, and he calls Gomer to get him to bring him his jacket. And Andy turns the gas on and then lies down. And in comes Opie, and Andy has to leave to help him. And in the meantime, Gomer comes in, smells the leak, tries to fix it with a ratchet, doesn't just realize that the gas has been turned on, and he passes out. And Andy comes back in, turns the gas off, and wakes
I like how hard it is for Gomer to do, and then Andy's like, and then the little sound guy is like,
well, no, Gomer just didn't realize he turned the gas on. So he's got a wrench trying to fix the gas when all he had to do was turn the knob to shut it.
Yeah.
So as Gomer comes to, Andy's kind of like, oh, this is going to get even worse. But he comes up with an idea, and he leans against the cell and tells Gomer how he came in and turned the gas off and saved his life. And I think this is something we saw, like even with Hot Rod Otis, that Andy is really almost able to do some Jedi mind tricks with these people and say, you were out of it. You have no idea what you did.
Yeah, and they're talking really close. It's like they're about to kiss.
Yeah. Well, that does not happen. And Andy says he will be by his side every day. And Gomer says he doesn't have to do that. And then Andy says he's right because they are now even.
It's funny. I like it.
Yeah. And in comes Aunt V, and Andy channels Gomer as he tells the story of how he saved his life as we go to commercial. And
he's telling a great story. This is what I was saying earlier. Some good storytelling comes out.
Yeah, does a great job. Yeah. I mean, it's almost kind of like with Jim Nabors probably channeled Andy Griffith's monologue style when he told his version of it.
Mm-hmm.
And in the epilogue, Aunt B and Andy discuss how things are good between him and Gomer going forward. And then Gomer shows up with Andy's coat and says he realized that Andy's accident prone and needs his help going forward as we close.
It's funny. It's good.
It's funny. Yeah.
I like it. It's a good episode.
It's a good episode. How many whistles would you give it?
I'm going to 9 again.
I'm going to go 9 with you on this one.
All right.
Yeah.
Look at us.
Yeah. No, it's just, it's good stuff. It's, and it's one that just really works even with, it works more with Don Knotts not being there. And this is really one of the first ones where I would have ever said that.
Yeah, I agree.
There are so many where we watch and he's not on it, and you're kind of like, you missed Don Knotts in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
But if Don Knotts had been here, it would have almost...
It's still physical. It's not too serious. It's funny.
But yeah, Don Knotts would have almost been overkill or chaos in the whole process.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, any final thoughts?
No, good episode. We're on a good streak right now.
We are. Well, thanks for listening. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. And if you think about it, subscribe. Next week, we'll do Bargain Day. Until then, Christopher, goodbye, lifesaver man.
Spartans, prepare for battle.